Well, welcome back to the Dashboard Dojo. Let's go ahead and get started. Today is our third in a special series called the Masters in the Dojo series. And we have special guest Aaron Crear with us. So very excited about that. Welcome back to the dojo. If it's your first time here, dojo is a place to learn the way. I lived in Japan for a number of years and just loved seeing dojos as I traveled. And some are very ancient, some are held in auditoriums like this, and it's just always so cool to see people of all different ages and abilities working together to refine a craft. The last two recordings that we did, or actually all the recordings that we've ever done, are up on the Dashboard Dojo site. There's a recordings tab. There's the QR code for it here. So that most recent one from 2 weeks ago is getting started with Salesforce Reports 2, and that's up there on the site now. Thank you, Kyle, for oh, look at that. You put the link right there. That's great. So our agenda is pretty clear. So pretty crisp. We'll just spend a moment on introductions. I'll more formally introduce Aaron. And Aaron is someone that I've known for many years here in the Boston area. But also he and I cross paths at events around the world. And you can see up on the right, we were both speaking at Snowforce recently in Utah, and down below we were both in Casablanca in October, and that was great. And while we were in Casablanca, we went over to the bar that's been made to look like the bar in the movie Casablanca, and that was pretty cool. Going for a drink over there. So we'll talk about the dojo schedule, and then we'll take Q&A. So my name is David Carnes. I'm the chairman of OpFocus. Really happy and proud to be a Salesforce MVP. And to share something about myself, I was in this absolutely gorgeous bar in Lisbon on the way back from that North Africa dream in October. And my first glimpse of it was actually at night, and it was filled with people, and it just had this glow to it. And then the next day I saw this during daylight, and I was like, my gosh, it is just so beautiful that places like this exist. So that was really cool. I can't wait to go back because it was just that beautiful. Our sponsor is OpFocus, where Kyle and I both work. Kyle Shagnon is OpFocus's event manager. Thank you for hosting us again, Kyle.
Always a pleasure.
Okay. And OpFocus, we're a consulting shop. We work with SaaS companies to scale the go-to-market operations. We've been working in the Salesforce community since 2006. All right, so let's kill this and let's introduce Aaron. So we have Aaron Crear with us today, master in the dojo. Welcome, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
So Aaron is the owner of a consulting firm called Hat Trick Consulting, and he's very involved with his client projects. Aaron, you're also so you're a father, you're a hockey coach, you're a user group leader. I'm probably missing a few other really cool designations for you. I'm curious though, like, how did you get involved in Salesforce?
So I first became involved with Salesforce as a sales rep. So I used it as an end user originally, both as a rep and eventually as a manager, growing a team of sales folks, and started teaching myself just how to do more with it, and became that kind of accidental admin that everybody's heard about at a few companies. And the last company that I was working for was a Microsoft partner, where I would go to these trade shows like the ones you and I speak at now, and I would go with our consultants. They'd be up on stage and I'd be manning the booth. And I said, I would love to be able to do that for Salesforce someday. So about 7 years ago, this summer, I decided I was tired of having a quota hanging over my head. I wanted to make that career pivot, and took the summer off, started with Trailhead and started studying for certs, and kind of had always wanted to have my own business. So I just said, if I'm going to make this career pivot now, I'm going to do both at the same time. And luckily it worked out.
That is so cool. I remember that leap of faith distinctly, quitting a job. I had signed a $25,000 contract for a re-implementation of Salesforce in 2006. And you think of how simplistic Salesforce must have been, and it was in 2006. And this was a re-implementation of a very simplistic tool. But it does take that leap of faith to begin the entrepreneurial journey. So I'm so glad that you made it, and it's so cool to see all your success. And you've really carved out a lifestyle I mean, to think of all these countries, do you know the number of countries you've spoken in now?
Not off the top of my head. It's got to be at least 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Going up again next month in Albania, so I add another one to the list.
Oh, that's so cool. And that Mario's really doing an excellent job planning for that. Yeah, that's great. And you've been interested in reporting specifically for a number of years. You founded the Reportforce blog with Evan Ponter, who's also been a guest on the Masters in the Dojo series. How did you get interested in reporting?
I just have always been into numbers and data, and it's like that one thing where you show somebody a dashboard and you just see their face light up because it's all this data that kind of sits somewhere, but nobody really knows where or how to get it. And you're able to show them, actual real meaningful numbers about their business that can help drive them, whether they're good, bad, or um, both. It's going to help them hopefully improve their business and make them more efficient. So it's kind of that sweet spot, and everybody likes it. It's like, you never hear people when they see dashboards that we're not going to use that. It's just they don't always have the skill set to build it themselves.
Yeah, and there's this helplessness when there's so much data within an organization and they just can't zero in on it to support decisions that they need to make. I think of it like taking, like maybe as an eyeglass, where if somebody put like Vaseline on my glasses, literally I wouldn't see anything. And I think there's a lot of companies that are sort of running their businesses with Vaseline on one or both of the lenses in front of their eyes. And if you sort of wipe that away and clear it, that's the impact of providing good reports and dashboards.
I agree.
What's something that you know now about reporting that you wish you knew at the beginning?
Um, well, I can tell you that a lot of the simple things that I know now, I did not know at the beginning. So one real simple example, you've heard me give this other places, but is cross filters. So there was a time where somebody asked me to figure out all the accounts that were in the system that did not have contacts. I had no idea that I could do that in 3 seconds with a cross filter.
It's so powerful.
So I had to export the entire database, build some formulas in Excel that basically returned a number if it counted more than one person from that company, and took hours and hours. So a lot of those really simple things, until you kind of stumble upon them, you don't know about them. They're super efficient.
And even if you had reporting knowledge in another reporting tool, you might not expect that that sort of feature would be available. Salesforce actually owns a patent on that as a reporting technique.
God, I
Um,
didn't know that.
yeah, yeah. So Marco Kusel, who ran the product engineering team for reports and dashboards for 10 or 12 years, he told me that once at Dreamforce. We were geeking out about how cool cross filters were. um, So, do you have a favorite reporting feature or some combination of features?
I'm a really big fan of row level formulas now, because I think that they really help you clean up some of those fields that people have created on objects just to consume through reports. So I think, a common example is like days to close. People create on opportunities all the time. You know, how many days from creation to close date. They're almost never going to look at that on an actual record, but they want to see, averages. They want to see it in reports. So being able to just put that row level formula and not have to, take up another field or clutter things up, I really like.
Yeah. When row level formulas came out, it was still in beta. It didn't support pick list fields, and I'm like, God, this is stupid. Like, you got to support pick lists. And it's funny. Like, the team comes up with these ideas, and I think they really benefit from the feedback on stuff like that. And I wonder if there's another form of feedback with the row level formulas. Like, these are so useful that we need more than one per report.
Yeah, I was speaking with, I don't remember, I think it was, I'm going to butcher his name, Rav.
Oh, Raghav.
Yeah, I think it was Dreamforce 2 years ago, and I was talking to him about, what's the roadmap for that, and there was a really, really at that point significant performance
Mm-hmm.
lag by adding a second one. It was like 50% or something crazy. So they're trying to solution a way to work around that. But yeah, we definitely need more than one.
Yeah, well, he's a good person to talk to about that. He knows all sorts of like Easter eggs that are possible, things that are possible within formulas that just aren't documented, or stuff like that. So I'm glad that you met up with him. Um, so you're a regular speaker at Dream and Events, Dreamforce, World Tours. You talked about having that moment of saying, I want to do this in the Salesforce community, but like what inspired you to do that?
To start speaking, it was kind of twofold. One, I thought it would be a pretty good way to promote my business. So that was one. And the other is I really feel so fortunate that I was able to make that career pivot. And I know so many people are in the same boat. So it's kind of my way of giving back as well. You know, I genuinely like teaching people. Like you said, I've coached hockey for 20 plus years. So kind of helping see people advance, whether it's on the ice or in their career, I really like doing. So it's kind of my way to give it back to some other folks.
Well, that's great that it dovetails. It seems like harmonious with your business. Tell us about your business. Who do you work with? What kind of services do you provide?
So we work with companies all around the world. We provide admin, development, training services, mainly doing managed services and implementations. So companies that may be new to the platform, we can help build their infrastructure out, and then companies that maybe need some supplemental support for specialized areas that they might not have in-house, or companies that may not even have an admin in-house where they want to outsource all of their Salesforce needs. That's become a big part of my business.
And how can someone contact you?
I can go through our website, which I think Kyle, I just saw throw in the chat.
Yes.
Contact Twitter. It's at Aaron Crear, AARONCREAR. Those are probably the best two ways.
So you've been speaking, I've seen you speak at events about a whole number of really interesting topics. You've been developing thought and content around architecting for reporting recently. Like at a high level, what do you mean by talking about architecting for reporting?
It's kind of thinking through in a very structured and logical way all of the components that go into reporting. What I see way too often is people just think, you know, we're going to get Salesforce and all this stuff's going to appear. Some of it does, but some of it's not. You know, every business has their own customizations, their own specialized way of looking at numbers, reporting on metrics. And I just don't see people give enough thought to that up front. It's kind of like an afterthought. And then sometimes that's too late. You know, you have to make major changes at that point if you don't think about this stuff further upstream.
Yeah. So, and you're going to share some of that with us today. Do you want to take over and take it for a ride?
Sure. Yeah, I'll walk you through a real world example. Able to see it okay?
Looks good on my
Yes.
end.
All righty. So we're going to talk about architecting for analytics a bit here. I'll skip this because we've already done my background. And really kind of the objective of this presentation is, like I said, the process to think about how to structure your reporting engine. So data drives decisions, but that data needs to be reliable. It needs to be clean, needs to be consumable. And as I said a few minutes ago, don't make this an afterthought. Think about this up front. So whether you're doing a brand new implementation or you're building a new app or new objects, think about this stuff up front, because you're going to save a lot more time and you're going to have a better end result quicker. So your time to value is going to be a lot faster. So what are we talking about analytics architecture? It's the process of collecting, storing, refining, analyzing, and presenting data. And some major components are the data model. You know, where is this data? You know, is it sitting in custom objects, standard objects? How are they related to one another? The data location. Does all of this data sit inside of Salesforce, or is some of it in external applications that we need to connect to? Does that data need to be prepped? right? Is it clean where it is? Or if you're taking data from multiple sources, do we have to combine those into one data set? And then how are we consuming all of this data? Is it through a report? Is it through dashboards? Is it through something like Tableau? How are we going to actually get these visualizations and be able to look at the metrics and make decisions on them? So where do we start? As far as this process, we want to understand what are the analytical goals of the business? What are they trying to get out of their data? Are we reporting on sales? Is it customer satisfaction? What are those things? Okay. I have a blog post that has a whole laundry list of requirements, how to ask for those requirements. I can share that in the chat in a bit here. But you want to go through that very detailed. And again, you want to start this process early. So new implementation, new builds, do it up front. What are the roadblocks to those goals in current state? Is it external data sources that we can't connect to? Is it we don't have the in-house capabilities to build what we need to produce these analytics, right? And then how do we get around those roadblocks to make sure we can drive forward and produce what the business needs? I want to make this personal, right? So scope requirements with multiple groups, right? Executives are going to have much different requirements than, say, the sales director or the customer support team, right? So you want to make sure that you can scope that out. Don't just sit with, one set of stakeholders and think that's going to cover everything. Identify the power users in each of those groups. They're going to be your allies. They're going to help drive the requirements gathering and give you what you need in order to build what they need. And then make your tailored solutions, because those are going to drive adoption, right? If I'm a customer support manager and I can understand that what you're going to build for me is going to help us close cases quicker by seeing data, that's huge for me. I'm going to be more likely to be your ally and more likely to help drive adoption. So you want to make sure that all of these different groups feel like you're tailoring specific builds and requirements just to make their jobs easier. All right, so I'm going to use a real world example here. So current state of this organization is they pay out commissions internally to sales reps and sales managers. They also pay out externally to distributors and referral sources. The finance team calculates all of those commissions in spreadsheets and then manually creates statements each month. So none of this lives in Salesforce. None of this is automated in any way. It's all manually done in spreadsheets. Sales team also has no visibility into their commissions earned unless they're manually tracking that on their own until they get the reports from finance. So very labor intensive, time consuming process, current state. So if we're going to think about architecting a solution for this, we got to have some requirements. So the must-haves are, we want to automate the creation of commissions. We want to have the ability to look at a deal with calculated and aggregated commissions on them. We want to be able to report on margin after commissions to see how much the business is truly making. So next, we're going to think about what options do we have to be able to do something like this. So we could use something like Tableau or CRM Analytics, which would let us combine, say, opportunity information from Salesforce with those spreadsheets from finance for the commissions. Still a lot of manual work because they'd have to create everything in those spreadsheets. Obviously, extra costs for those licenses. And maybe the company doesn't have anybody internally that knows anything about either of those two tools and wouldn't be able to manage them on their own. So let's say we're going to cross that one off the list for this. Option 2 would be something like one of the app exchange partners. There's a bunch out there for commissions. Good that they're pre-built, is typically faster to implement. Negative is, again, extra cost. And you're kind of tied to that third-party vendor. You're not always able to customize things as much as you would want to on your own. So let's say we're going to cross that off. That leaves us with build it on platform ourselves, which gives us the flexibility to make it do anything we want, managed by us, and minimal extra licensing costs. So obviously, there's costs to the build itself and our time and resources. So we're going to follow down that path. And next step, once we've identified our options, is we're going to build a proof of concept where we want to try and mock up a solution that produces what those requirements were. So when we talk about commissions, we want to be able to easily see aggregated and calculated data on an opportunity. So on a deal, when we're looking at a record, we want to be able to see all those numbers right there. So the first thing we need to think about is our data model. And here's a little view of what this is going to look like. Because we want to have those essentially roll-ups on the opportunity, we're going to create a custom object for commissions. It's going to be a master detail with the opportunity, which is going to help drive those roll-ups. We're going to have lookups then from the commissions to our two types of essentially sales reps. We have our internal team, which is the opportunity team members. And then we have our external reps who are going to be opportunity contact roles. So our commissions will look up to both of those objects, but the creation of those objects is going to automatically drive the creation of the commission records themselves. So we're able to do kind of our internal and external all fully automated with this model. I'm going to jump out of here and show you actually what this looks like. So if we just take a peek at setup, look at our commission objects. So we can see here, we have our channel partner and reseller, which is a lookup to the account. We have our channel partner reseller rep, which is a lookup to the contact of the opportunity contact role. We did this at 2 layers because most likely if an external rep sells something, you're not going to send that individual a check. You're probably going to end up paying their company, which would then cut the check back to their internal rep. So that's why we've done it at both levels here. We have our master detail here with the opportunity. And then we have a lookup to the sales team member, which is from the opportunity team. Opportunity team does not support lookups, which is why we're actually using the user from that team member. So pretty simple object here. We're tying it to the contacts, users, and then we have a status, which we can see here. Basically projected, owed, paid, lost, right? Because we want to see what have they earned, what do we owe them on, what could they earn, right? So if you can show a sales rep, you know, what they're projected to make, that's a pretty important thing because they're all coin operated. That would be motivation to them. So pretty simple model here. If we jump over to an example, let's take a look at our opportunity here. We have a custom tab for commission. We get a bunch of roll-ups here. And our automation is going to take care of creating these. So if I add opportunity team members here, of say sales manager is May, and our sales rep, Kim. We're going to save, and we can see here we have our 2 commission records. Same thing triggers on our contact roles. And these are tied to specific roles to the creation. And we can see here, we have all our commission records created. We now have our commission rate and our amount. So how did we set those? There's a few ways to do it. You could use formula fields. You could use formulas in the flow. But what I've used is a custom metadata type, which I'll show you. And why I like this is because it lets you have historic visibility into any changes over those rates. So if we take a peek at the back end here, we have our commission rate. And we'll manage our records. And I've just done some variations here. So basically it's looking at opportunity type in the team member role. And that's what drives what the actual commission rate is. right? It makes sense. You're going to get paid more on new business than you will on renewals or upsells. So you could do any sort of variation of this. You would be able to deactivate these, add new ones year over year. It would also support if your rates change daily, weekly, monthly, you would just have to create a set of records in here to control that. But it would support almost any variation or frequency of that. So when we come back to our record, we have our statuses of projected, we have our rates, and then we have our roll-ups that drive from our records down below. So how did we get the creation of these? We've done it with Flow, and we have a few different versions. So we're going to create commission record. So pretty simple flow here. We've just looked at when the team member role is one of those two. So right now we have sales rep, sales manager. You can now obviously add in more like account manager and at any point. We're then going to get that custom metadata type record based on it being active, matching the opportunity type in the team member role. That tells us what their percentage or their rate is. We're then getting our record type for the internal. So the commissions have two record types, internal or external. This is being fired from the opportunity team. So we're generating an internal record. And then we're creating our commission where we're setting the rate from that metadata type. And then our commission amount is just a formula that looks at that rate, takes the opportunity amount and calculates it. We also have flows that would do remove people on deletion. So if a team member was pulled off of a deal, we want to go and get that record and delete it. So they're not getting paid on a deal they're no longer working on. So we're just matching on the roll here. And then we're going to delete our records. It says the sales team member equals this user, and the opportunity is the op ID. We're going to delete that record. So it's a good solution where it's fully automated. Nobody needs to manually create these. When I first built this, I actually did not want to set the commission amount here because we're going to have to change this, right? If they add products, so if I add a product, we're going to want to see these numbers change, right? Based on what the deal is. So let's just say add a product. Call it, we'll add these two. We're going to want to see our commissions get updated, right? Because deals are always going to change. And we can see here, they've all updated. Originally, I just wanted to try and be a formula to not have to have additional automation. So we have a third flow that would trigger anytime the amount changes, the record, the type. So we would update those stage change. So when it goes to close, which I'll do in a minute, we're going to want to see the status also change. So just do that. Now we owe them as opposed to being a projection, right? So originally I wanted to use formulas for that, both for the amount and the status tying to the stage, so that I didn't have to have that extra automation run to be able to report on this stuff. The problem was with these roll-ups, because formulas can't be used in filters. So all of these different roll-ups are filtered to specific criteria. We couldn't use these. So it was a roadblock that I had to do a complete rebuild. I had created these as formula fields and had to go back and rebuild them and have build the automation to set them in order for the roll-up calculations to work properly. So that was one of the roadblocks we had. We had 4 major roadblocks that we had to get through, and this was one of them. Now, when we're talking about commissions, what's one thing that most people are going to have a concern with right off the bat?
Privacy.
You got it, right? So obviously, David shouldn't see my commission records. I shouldn't see his. We can see here we have 2 reps, sales rep and a sales manager here. The major roadblock I had, and this one is one that really threw me for a loop is because we used a master detail, which we wanted to do for two reasons. One, you can't make commission if it's not on an op, right? They inherently go together. And two, we wanted to drive all these roll-ups. The major issue with that as far as visibility is there are no sharing rule options for master detail relationships. The parent controls the child. And by these two reps being on the opportunity team, they are given access to the opportunity, which then gives them access to all of the commissions. So that's a roadblock. How do we get around that? Because we know that that's a deal breaker right then and there. If everybody can see all commissions, this is not a solution for us. So I was kind of racking my brain. How can we make this work? The option that I knew would work that I did not want to do would be to change it from a master detail to a lookup and then rebuild all of these. Instead of being roll-ups, they would be currency fields and then using flow automation to populate them. Right? I did not want to do that. It would be a ton of work. So I was trying to figure out a way to do it. And ironically enough, it was a feature I had never heard about and never used before called restriction rules.
I love this.
I can tell you I was doing cartwheels when I figured this out. So a restriction rule here, the way we've structured it is it just says if the active user, the commission sales team member equals the current user, give them access. If not, they can't see it. So really simple solution if you know what exists. This is an example of I had no idea this thing existed until I ran into this problem. But we can see here this sales team member. So it just basically says if Cam is the current user and he's in this field, give him access to the record. If not, don't. So I'm going to log in as him just so we can see how this works.
And are restriction rules limited to custom objects? I feel like there was something in the notes.
Yes. As of at least the last release, it was only custom objects. You can only have 2 per object. And they instruct you not to give anybody more than 1.
I'm so glad this worked for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's almost like, so if we just look at our ops, we'll find one here just on the dash.
So this is such a great example of architecting for reporting because you're making structural decisions, you're making process decisions, you're making security decisions.
Correct. And now we can see here, this is the same opportunity. I'm only seeing that 1 commission for mine. I don't, for Cam. Cam sees his own. He's not seeing mine, and he doesn't see that external rep either. Anybody notice anything else missing from this page? All of those roll-ups that were up here. So why did we take those away? Because the sales reps are going to be nosy, and if they can see them, they're going to be able to figure out that other people are getting paid on those deals and what those other people might be getting paid on those deals. So this was another roadblock we had to have where only certain users should be able to see these. So there's 2 ways that we did that. One is we took away their field level security access to see them. That's needed because we don't want them to be able to run a report or go into list view and do that. Now, just from a UI perspective, like we don't want to have this total commission section here and just be blank for them. That's, you know, they're going to know something's missing. It's just not going to look right. So what we did is in our lightning page, we've just added a filter on the component. As this loads. So we've just said user role not equal to Eastern sales team, don't show it, right? I only have 2 roles in here, so this is easy. You'd have to customize this, but it basically makes this whole component disappear. So they're not seeing, you know, an empty space. And then for our 2 related lists here, we've used dynamic related lists. So we're filtering it based on our record type, 1 for each. So it splits the same object into 2 different related lists. And then we've customized the columns that we see. For our component here, what I used for this, dynamic forms will replace the this, but I'll just show you what I did anyways, is I just used an action on the opportunity, which basically just lets us display all of those fields in a little UI. So we place this action into the Lightning page, and now we can see all of those. These are our roll-ups, so they're locked anyways, but if you ever do this, just make sure that you set some of these to read only if you don't want people to be able to edit them, because within this action component, they would be able to edit them. All right. One of the other roadblocks with the master detail that we run into is in a report or even in a list view, there is no option for like my commissions, because that commission doesn't have an owner. It's a master detail. So your standard out of the box of my filters in both reports and list views is not available. So to do that, I've created a custom option. And if we look at our list filters, all commissions, record type of earning, running user equals true. And what I've done for that is on our commission, we've created just a custom field called running user. And it's just a formula. It just says user ID equals the current sales equals a sales team member on that commission record. Check the box. So we're able to use essentially the same functionality, just in a custom way, because we know that everybody's going to want this list view, this list filter, so we can create the reports for them this way.
And what's great is, as of the spring release, we do have the personalized filters, which we could use for that sales team member, which so personalized filters are only available to us on lookup fields up to a user object. You'd need it for the list view, that running user formula that you showed us.
Correct. Yeah. So that was the other workarounds. And then to be able to kind of present these and consume them, what we've done is I've created just a custom tab here called cash. So for our reps, we want them to be able to see all of their stuff. What am I projected to make? What am I owed? So I've just embedded a dashboard in this tab. I love doing this for things people are going to look at all the time. Like if when I was a sales rep, I would look at this multiple times a day. So instead of having to go to the dashboards tab and try and remember what folder something sits in, I do this a ton for executives, where I'll just create them an app that's literally tabs of dashboards, because that's mainly what they want to see. And we've embedded our dashboard here, so we can see all of our commission metrics right here. We have our projected, owed, paid. We have month over month. We have our table, so we can reference to make sure that this is accurate. And then we've just added some filters, so we can slice and dice the data based on the status of the payments, new business versus renewal, upsell, maybe the close date, so we can figure out how we want to slice and dice our data. So this is a solution for the reps. Now we have to give something back to the finance team, right? They had a couple of big issues of, manually creating all these statements, especially for the external folks, as well as they needed to be able to report on margin after commissions are paid. So what we've done for that is we'll look at our reports here. So for our distributors or our external folks, we're able to create this report for them, and they can actually inline edit right here. So if they're updating these records to mark what's paid, they can pick their payment date. They can switch that to paid right from here. So they don't need to export this to an Excel, update it, and then push it back in. They're able to make these updates themselves here.
Oh, they must love that.
Yeah. I was thinking about doing like some sort of flow where they could do all this stuff, and maybe take all the commissions for a rep and a distributor or from an op and mass update them. And then the more I thought about it, it's probably not going to work, because you may not be paying all of these people at the same time, especially the internal ones. You may be marking it as paid, but it's really for next pay cycle. It would be doable in some sort of automation, but I kind of backed that out from this build. But this certainly saves them some time here. The last piece was the margin. So having them be able to see the different margin based on the type of opportunities. Obviously new business, you're paying out more commissions than renewals. So we would hope to see a higher margin on the renewals. And then likewise, our internal ones have a higher margin than our external, because the external, you're paying internal people and external people. So it kind of allows you to do that. And these margin fields are just formulas on the opportunity itself. Move back to my slides for a minute. Make sure I covered all of our hurdles, which I think we did. We had our master detail restriction rule, my formula field. We've used the flow to set the commission and the status, which we couldn't use formula fields because of the roll-up filters. And then hiding the roll-ups, we've used permission sets. So I gave certain users would get read only. So that would be basically all your reps. View all would go to folks that need to see all those roll-ups, and then modify all on the commissions would be mainly finance, because they're going to have to update the payment date, the status, that sort of stuff.
And for those of you guys that haven't built out custom objects before and wanting to report on them, you do have to be very explicit for every custom object, for every profile, giving out permissions to even see any records in that custom object.
Yep.
So there's so many interesting data points here in support of reporting. This is awesome.
Yeah, and the other things to think about with that, you want to make sure people have the right permissions for the object and the field access, but also think about your folder structure. What reports, a report sits in a folder that needs to be shared with folks. Dashboards sit in different folders, which also need to be shared. So think about how you want to structure those as well. All right. Once we have our POC, we want to have a review. So the things we're thinking about here are, does this meet the current business requirements? We automated commissions, check. We're saving finance time, check. We're able to calculate margin, check. We're able to give the reps real-time visibility into all of their potential earnings, check. So I think we hit all of those. What's the impact or risk level? So what does this impact what we already have? What's the impact moving forward? This isn't something that I would call minimal risk, right? It's what people's livelihoods depend on. So it has to be airtight, accurate. It has to be super secure, and it's got to be fully automated. That's not a low level of risk. Is it scalable? So we have this set up for sales reps, sales manager. We can easily add in account managers, customer success, renewal support. We can add more layers for that. We can add more frequency of rate changes. So instead of being annual rates, it could be monthly, quarterly, daily. Those are scalable. Is it scalable if we have a 20-tier hierarchy of our teams, down the road? Maybe, maybe not, because that restriction rule is limited to 2 per object, and you're not supposed to give people more than 1. That could be a true roadblock. What would be the impact of that? That would be major. You'd have to rebuild all of this, because you'd have to take away your master detail, make it a lookup, take away all your roll-ups, make them currency fields, build all kinds of flows to populate those and calculate them. That's due to a massive data load. That would be a huge, huge problem. So you need to think about that now before you go and decide this is the right solution. And then what level of maintenance and support will be needed? Is this something where we need specialized help from OpFocus or Hattrick to maintain this for us forever? Or is this something that's simple enough that with some training, our internal admin team can manage? Something like this, your internal admin team can definitely manage. But these are some of the things you want to think about after you've built your POC.
So Aaron, we've got 2 questions, if I could throw them in. So Sridevi asked, in general, when do we have to think of creating custom metadata types?
What I use them for a lot is think of them as like a reference table. So I mainly use them in automation where we want to go get something to do like a calculation. But I like them more than like you could do essentially do the same thing with a custom object, but it's an extra layer of kind of security because most folks aren't, the non-admins aren't going to have access to touch these, even though you could, if you did a custom object for these commission rates, you can control who can see them and not edit them. But I like the custom metadata type because it adds an extra layer of security, but they're also deployable. Whereas if you use the custom object in a sandbox to do your build, now you have to data load all of those records again in every environment. Whereas the custom metadata type you can deploy through environments. So
that's great. So Sridevi asked the follow-on questions: what kind of data, and is there any limitation on the number of custom metadata types?
I've used them for like rates like this. I use them a lot for like mapping ownership. So if there's a handoff between like a BDR and an AE for a deal or an account, I'll create a custom metadata type table that has the mapping of, from this BDR to this AE. I use that stuff a lot as opposed to like trying to hard code all that stuff in flows. It makes it a lot easier. You just do your match on the record, and then that gives you your mappings. I'm sure there's some sort of limit based on your edition, but I honestly don't know what they are.
Awesome. Thank you. And Kaneko asked the question, she clarifies it as a beginner question. Do you conduct a proof of concept review with stakeholders after building the prototype, such as what you showed us today?
Yeah, because your prototype is kind of like making sure that your design and what you think is the right solution based on the requirements you're given actually works. So you're going to have to get through that process at least to some point. Maybe you don't go all the way there depending on the complexity of what you're trying to build. But you want to have that. I would do that basically. I would do the demo with the POC review basically at the same time. Okay, this is the solution we built for the requirements we were giving. This is how it all works. We think we're meeting all these requirements, and then go through your review process.
Thank you.
Yeah. That was actually my last slide. These are some of the resources that I like. My blog, obviously, about the Dōjō. And then if you're into CRM analytics, Salesforce Blogger is another great resource for you.
Oh, that's cool. That's one I don't know of. Salesforce Blogger. That's great. And reportforce.blog, for everyone's benefit, you've probably, if you've been on before, you've probably heard me talk about it before, but some really, really good, interesting, just in-depth topics that they've covered on some really interesting aspects of reports, dashboards, and sort of the foundation beneath them.
Yep. Hopefully adding more content soon.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much, Aaron. We've got some time if there are other questions that folks would like to ask. This is a little different than what we've done in the Dōjō. I think occasionally when talking about formulas, we've sort of waded down into the foundation below, that supports all this. Not every report dashboard writer is an admin, of course. And what's so interesting is all these foundational things that can really play a role in what we're able to do with reports and dashboards. So I love these examples that you shared with us today.
I hope folks find them useful.
And even something as simple as field level security or the restriction rules that you mentioned, allowing one report to satisfy multiple needs within an organization.
Yeah, you want to try it. Some of the roadblocks, like the roll-ups not supporting filters, like that was the right way to try and build this without that extra automation. But you do run into roadblocks where you kind of have to pivot and understand what you need to do to give the business what it needs.
Amazing. So you shared that you're going to be speaking at some events coming up. Very specifically, because I'm sure you actually have quite a few. Where are you going to be?
I am going to Albania Dreaming, Czech Dreaming, Your Architect Dreaming, London's Calling, Southeast Dreaming, and Texas Dreaming as of right now.
Oh, that's great. So I'll see you at 2 of those.
Cool.
Well, that's amazing. All right, it looks like there aren't any other questions. I have just one more slide to share. And that's the reportforce.blog. But as far as upcoming dojo session, I mentioned on April 12th, we're going to do something kind of soup to nuts, where someone had an operating partner at a private equity firm and said, this is how I need to see information about, to help analyze the go-to-market opportunity for each of our portfolio companies. And he shared his Excel sheet that he's currently doing it manually in now. And he said, can you help me build this? And I said, well, let's break it apart. This is going to require a custom report type, and this is going to require a couple of formulas, the power of one formulas, and this is going to require, and we just literally stepped through all the sort of bits that we had to put in place. And then we went and created the joined report. And what I thought to do in this session is actually just start with, hey, here's the Excel file, that the workbook that he showed me, and here's how we thought about it in each step of the way, and including some of the things that didn't work. And the things didn't work because bucket fields aren't available on joined reports, and because formulas are limited, custom formula fields. They're just sort of some really interesting limitations that we bumped up against, but we were able to get to very close to what he needed. So that's April 12th. The registration's up online for that now. I do hope to see you again. Aaron, it's really been a pleasure to have you with us on the dojo. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Kyle, thanks once again for serving as our host. Look forward to seeing everyone again at a dojo soon.
Of course. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the week.